Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are very excited to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. So now, let's begin today's story journey. The Barcelona sunshine cast striped shadows on the bedroom floor through the blinds. Gabriel Costa opened his eyes and quietly observed his sleeping wife Isabel beside him. Her black hair was spread across the pillow, her breathing steady and quiet. He gently caressed her cheek, feeling an indescribable happiness welling up inside him. Having been married for only a month, he still occasionally felt a sense of unreality, as if all this happiness was just a dream. "Good morning, beautiful," Gabriel said softly, kissing Isabel's forehead. Isabel slowly opened her eyes, her lips curving upward. "How long have we been married?" she asked, her voice heavy with sleep. "Exactly 30 days," Gabriel answered, his fingers gently combing through her hair. "Feels like 30 years, Isabel joked, but also like only 30 seconds. This was how they were together, comfortable and intimate, as if they had known each other for a lifetime, yet also like they were discovering each other anew every day. Gabriel was a renowned architectural restoration expert in Barcelona, specializing in the city's historic buildings. His skillful hands and infinite patience for detail had earned him a reputation in the field. Although his work required focus and dedication, he always made sure to set aside enough time for Isabel. Their marriage was built on mutual respect and understanding, at least that's what he had always believed. Isabel worked in the high-end hotel industry as a consultant, helping boutique hotels improve their operations and customer experience. She was intelligent and ambitious, well-respected in her circle. Though she came from an upper-class family, she had chosen to live according to her own heart, unbound by her parents' expectations, at least on the surface. During breakfast, Isabel put down her coffee cup, her expression becoming somewhat hesitant. "My parents called last night," she said, her fingers nervously rubbing the rim of her cup. "They want me to go with them to Seville for a few days, a family trip. They say it's to visit some distant relatives and historical family sites." Gabriel raised his eyebrows. "We just got married, and they already want to take you away?" he asked with a wry smile. "They say it's tradition," Isabel explained, "and they've been planning it for a long time. I know the timing isn't great, but it's important to them." She paused. "Could you come with us?" Gabriel sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "You know I'm working on that Sagrada Familia project right now. Next week is a critical period. I really can't get away." He saw a flash of disappointment in Isabel's eyes and quickly added, "But if it's really important to you, I can try to adjust my schedule." Isabel reached out and took his hand. "No, I understand. Your work is important, and it's just a few days. We have a lifetime to be together." She smiled, but Gabriel noticed her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Are you sure? I don't want you to face your parents alone," Gabriel said, half jokingly, but with a hint of real concern. Carmen and Alejandro Navarro had never fully accepted him, despite maintaining a polite facade. They always subtly expressed disappointment in their daughter's choice, a middle-class architectural restorer rather than the son of some wealthy family in their circle. "I'll be fine," Isabel assured him. "It's just an ordinary family trip." If Gabriel had known then how this family trip would change their lives, he would have stopped it at all costs. But fate can be cruel sometimes, and often it's the most ordinary decisions that lead to the most profound consequences. The air in Seville was filled with the scent of orange blossoms and jasmine. Isabel followed her parents through the ancient streets, feeling a strange premonition. This family trip had seemed odd from the beginning, too rushed, too deliberate, too unlike their usual style. "Tonight we have a special dinner," Carmen Navarro smiled, her eyes sparkling with an emotion Isabel couldn't quite read. "An old friend heard we were in town and insisted on hosting us." "What old friend?" Isabel asked, curious about her parents' mysterious attitude. "The Ferrer family," Alejandro answered, with obvious satisfaction in his tone. "Luis happens to be in town too. You remember him, don't you? The last time you met was at that hotel conference in Madrid." Isabel frowned. Luis Mendoza, the owner of the Ferrer Hotel Group, was indeed someone she knew professionally. Handsome, wealthy, confident, sometimes overly so. "Yes, I remember him," she replied calmly, not showing the excitement her parents clearly expected. Dinner was arranged at a luxurious private restaurant, the entire room reserved and decorated so lavishly It was almost suffocating. When Isabel arrived with her parents, Luis was already waiting, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit with a glass of red wine in his hand. "Isabel," he greeted enthusiastically, kissing her on both cheeks in the Spanish tradition, but lingering slightly longer than etiquette allowed. "Marriage suits you. You look beautiful." "Thank you," Isabel responded politely, while subtly stepping back. "Gabriel is very sorry he couldn't come. He's busy with an important project." She deliberately mentioned her husband's name, like an invisible shield. Of course," Luis smiled, but a look flashed in his eyes that Isabel didn't quite like. "Art always demands sacrifice, doesn't it?" The comment made Isabel feel somewhat uncomfortable. Gabriel's work was far more than just art. It was vital work preserving cultural heritage, requiring expertise and dedication. But to Luis, it seemed any profession not directly related to money wasn't worthy of respect. The dinner proceeded with disturbing smoothness. Luis was charming and attentive, constantly asking Isabel questions, showing sincere interest in her life. Even more disturbing was her parents' behavior. They almost openly pushed Isabel toward Luis, creating opportunities for them to talk alone while exchanging satisfied glances. Back at the hotel that night, Isabel directly confronted her parents. "What exactly is this? What are you plotting?" Carmen feigned innocence. "What do you mean, dear? We just happened to meet an old friend." "This wasn't a coincidence," Isabel insisted. "This was carefully arranged. I'm married, remember?" "Oh, Isabel," Alejandro sighed. "Marriage isn't a prison. Luis just wanted to entertain us as friends." "And," Carmen added, her voice becoming more direct, "a week of marriage doesn't amount to much if you realize you've made a mistake." Isabel looked at her parents in shock. "Made a mistake?" she repeated incredulously. "Gabriel is a good man," Carmen continued, pronouncing good as if it were a contempt. "But honestly, Isabel, what kind of life can he give you? Luis has a world-class hotel empire, while Gabriel patches up old buildings." "I love Gabriel," Isabel said firmly. "Love is a luxury, dear," Alejandro responded calmly. "And luxuries require money to maintain. Think about the future. Think about the life you could have." Isabel didn't answer, just turned and walked into her room, closing the door. She took out her phone, wanting to call Gabriel, but stopped. This kind of conversation should be had face to face, not over the phone. Besides, she didn't want to worry Gabriel or disrupt his work because of her parents' behavior. "It's just a few days," she told herself. "Then we'll go home." However, the next few days were far from simple. Luis happened to appear at every activity, every excursion. He showed them his new hotel, treated them to dinners prepared by private chefs, and even arranged a private yacht trip. Throughout it all, his attention remained focused on Isabel, while her parents were content to be spectators. On the third night, at a lavish rooftop bar, Isabel found herself alone with Luis once again. Her parents had excused themselves early, claiming fatigue, leaving the two of them to share wine under the stars. "Are you thinking about him?" Luis suddenly asked, breaking the silence. Isabel looked up. "What? Your husband?" Luis clarified. "You've been distracted. I'm guessing you're thinking about him." Isabel didn't answer immediately. Yes, she had been thinking about Gabriel, but not just because she missed him. She was wondering how much she should tell him about this trip, about her parents' obvious schemes, about Luis's presence. "Marriage doesn't suit everyone," Luis continued, his voice soft and magnetic. "Some people are naturally meant for more freedom, more possibilities." "What are you implying?" Isabel asked directly. Luis smiled, leaning forward, entering her personal space. "I'm implying that life is too short to limit yourself to any one choice, especially when better options exist." "I'm quite satisfied with my choices," Isabel replied, but her voice wasn't as firm as she had hoped. "Are you really?" Luis's hand gently covered hers. "If you were truly satisfied, why are you here, in a room with me, instead of rushing back to your husband?" The question pierced Isabel's heart like an arrow. Why hadn't she more firmly refused this trip? Why hadn't she made her boundaries clearer to Luis? Why had she allowed her parents to manipulate the situation this way? Perhaps it was the influence of alcohol, perhaps the sense of freedom away from home, perhaps a reaction to her parents' lifelong pressure, or simply Luis's undeniable charm. Whatever the reason, when Luis leaned in to kiss her, Isabel didn't push him away. That moment of decision, that second of weakness, would forever change the trajectories of four people's lives. When Isabel returned to Barcelona a week later, her world was no longer the same. What had happened with Luis? Not just a brief kiss, but an affair that developed over several days, followed her like a shadow. Her phone was filled with messages from him, a mixture of promises and temptations. Her mind echoed with her parents' words, constantly suggesting that her marriage to Gabriel was a mistake that could be corrected. Gabriel met her at the airport, his face showing genuine joy. "I missed you terribly," he said, pulling her into his arms. "The house felt too empty without you." Isabel barely returned his embrace, feeling a wave of intense guilt. "I missed you too," she lied, though it felt so wrong. On the way home, Gabriel excitedly talked about his project's progress, while Isabel remained mostly silent. He asked about her trips several times, but she gave only vague answers, claiming fatigue prevented her from describing it in detail. The following days were even more difficult. Isabel found herself unable to look Gabriel in the eye, unable to bear his touch, unable to fit into the intimacy that once came so naturally between them. Every phone call, every text message made her nervously glance at her phone, afraid it was Luis, yet hoping it was. Gabriel noticed the change. He wasn't a fool, nor was he a husband who didn't care about his wife. He noticed her distance, noticed how she kept her phone close, noticed her sudden lack of interest in things they used to enjoy together. Isabel, one evening, as they sat in the living room, each absorbed in their own world, Gabriel spoke up. "Is something wrong? You've been different since you came back from Seville." Isabel took a deep breath, knowing she couldn't continue like this. She had to make a decision, had to face her actions. But she wasn't brave enough to be completely honest. So, she chose a path that seemed gentler but was actually more cruel. "Gabriel," she said, her voice firmer than she had expected, "I think we should take a break." Gabriel's expression froze. "A break?" he repeated, his voice filled with disbelief. "We've only been married for a month." "I know," Isabel continued, avoiding his gaze. "But I feel we might have rushed into things. I need some time and space to think." Gabriel stood up, his expression changing from shock to understanding, then to a cold determination Isabel had never seen before. He didn't argue, didn't ask for explanations, just calmly walked to his study, returning a few minutes later with a folder in his hand. "What a coincidence," he said, with a strange calmness in his voice. "Because I just received some information about that trip." Isabel felt a wave of fear. "What information?" she asked weakly. Gabriel placed the folder on the coffee table in front of her and opened it. Inside were photos, hotel records, and a detailed timeline documenting her every activity in Seville, every interaction with Luis, every lie. "I hired a private investigator," Gabriel explained, his voice terrifyingly calm, "when your behavior became strange. I had hoped I was being paranoid, hoped it was just my imagination. But the reality was crueler than my worst fears." Isabel trembled as she picked up the photos, seeing pictures of herself intimate with Luis on the private yacht, in the hotel lobby, entering and leaving his luxury suite. Worse, there were photos of her parents, clearly showing the whole situation, how they had carefully arranged every moment she spent alone with Luis. "How could you do this?" she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks, unsure if she was accusing Gabriel of his investigation or ashamed of her own actions. "How could I do this?" Gabriel countered, anger showing in his voice for the first time. "We just got married, Isabel. We had just exchanged vows, promising loyalty and respect. Then you go on a family trip and sleep with another man. My parents were putting a lot of pressure." Isabel tried to explain, but the words sounded weak. "Your parents didn't force you to do anything," Gabriel interrupted her. "I've seen all the evidence. Yes, they arranged the meetings, but every step, every choice was yours." The truth hit Isabel like cold water. Gabriel was right. Although her parents had created the situation, she could have refused, could have stood by her marriage vows. Instead, she had given in, seduced by Luis's charm and her own desire for social status. After reading all the evidence, Isabel looked up at Gabriel, her eyes full of tears. But when she turned to the photos of her parents, her expression changed. The sadness in her tears was replaced by anger. Her parents' calculations, the way they had planned to destroy her marriage from the beginning, the evidence of how they had manipulated her entire life. It was all clearly presented in those cold documents. She glared at her parents' photos, her eyes filled with anger and a sense of betrayal. All these years, she had thought they were just overprotective, thought they just wanted her to have the best life. Now she understood they had never truly respected her choices, never truly seen Gabriel's value, not even respecting the sanctity of marriage. They planned the whole thing, Isabel whispered, her voice shaking with shock and anger. From the very beginning. Gabriel nodded, but his expression showed no sympathy. Yes, they planned it, but you executed it. This simple truth hit Isabel hard. No matter how much she blamed her parents, no matter how Luis tempted her, the final decision and betrayal were her own choice. Gabriel, she began, her tone pleading, I don't know what to say. I made a terrible mistake. Mistake, Gabriel repeated, with a coldness in his voice Isabel had never heard before. A mistake is buying the wrong milk or forgetting to pay a bill. What you did was a choice, Isabel. A choice that will change both our lives. Gabriel stood up, gathering the folder. I'll move to the guest room. Tomorrow I'll contact a lawyer. His voice was calm and resolute. Wait, Isabel pleaded. Can't we talk about this? Can't we try to fix this? Gabriel paused, turned to face her, with a heartbreaking calmness in his eyes. Some things once broken cannot be repaired. Trust is one of them. With these words, he left the room, leaving Isabel alone, immersed in the ruins she had created. She knew from this moment on, her life would never be the same. She had lost something irretrievable, and it was entirely her own fault. Lying in the bed they once shared, Isabel couldn't sleep. She remembered Gabriel's look, not anger or hatred, but a deep disappointment and final acceptance. This calm resolution was more terrifying than any angry outburst. Her phone lit up with a message from Luis. But now, his words that once made her heart race only made her feel sick. She silenced her phone, turned over, trying to block the tears, but they kept coming. Isabel knew tomorrow would be a new beginning, but not the hopeful kind. It would be the beginning where she must face the consequences of her actions. Her marriage was over, her choices had been made, and now she had to learn to live with them. In the distance, Gabriel also lay in the guest room bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. His heart was filled with various emotions, betrayal, anger, sadness, but mostly a strange relief. Not because his marriage was over, but because he finally knew the truth. His fingers traced over the folder filled with evidence. Seeing photos of Isabel with another man had cut him to the core, but also gave him strength. Knowledge is power, and truth has its own power. As the first light of dawn came through the curtains, Gabriel made a decision. This would not be a simple divorce. No, Isabel's betrayal, her parents' calculations, Luis's arrogance, all of it needed to be exposed and dealt with in a special way. As a restoration expert, Gabriel understood how to turn broken things into works of art, how to transform damage into part of beauty. Perhaps he couldn't repair his marriage, but he could ensure this story ended his way, with an ending that revealed truth and consequences. The seeds of revenge had been planted, and Gabriel Costa was not one to leave things half done. The following weeks were like a carefully choreographed dance, two dancers sharing a room, yet maintaining a polite and cold distance. Gabriel moved into the guest room, speaking to Isabel only when necessary. He contacted a lawyer, beginning divorce proceedings, the entire process surprisingly calm and orderly. Isabel tried several times to talk with Gabriel, begging forgiveness, offering various excuses, her parents' manipulation, Luis's insistence, her weakness. But Gabriel just listened in silence, then repeated the same words. Some things cannot be forgiven. Meanwhile, Isabel's parents kept calling, asking about the situation. When she finally told them Gabriel knew everything, their reaction made her feel like they were strangers. This may be for the best, Carmen said on the phone, with no trace of remorse in her voice. You can finally escape from that unsuitable marriage. Unsuitable. Isabel couldn't believe her ears. I love Gabriel. Love fades, dear, Alejandro interjected. But opportunities don't wait forever. Luis is still asking about you. He seems to really like you. Isabel hung up, feeling sick. Her parents' ruthlessness and calculation made her see clearly that they had never truly cared about her happiness, only about social status and material wealth. This realization made her both angry and sad, recognizing that she had been manipulated all her life without knowing it. Luis was still sending messages, inviting her to Madrid, promising to give her the life she deserved. Each message made her more disgusted with her own weakness, more regretful of her choices. Meanwhile, Gabriel immersed himself in work, spending longer than ever on restoration projects. His colleagues noticed the change, quieter, more focused, as if pouring all his emotions into the ancient stones and paints. But only Gabriel knew that his focus wasn't just to escape the pain, but to plan a special restoration work. One evening, as Isabel prepared dinner in the kitchen, Gabriel suddenly appeared in the doorway. This was the first time in weeks he had approached her voluntarily. "We need to talk," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Not about our marriage. That's over. It's about your parents and Luis." Isabel put down the knife she was holding and turned to face him, tears glistening in her eyes. "I know I did something unforgivable," she began, "but I've cut off contact with Luis and told my parents what I think of their actions." Gabriel nodded, but his expression didn't change. "I believe you did those things," he said, "but it's not enough." "Not enough," Isabel repeated. "What do you want me to do?" Gabriel took a small USB drive from his pocket and placed it on the kitchen island. "This contains all the evidence, photos, messages, recordings, even proof that your parents planned this whole thing, including the fact that they started contacting Luis before our wedding." Isabel stared at the small device as if it were a time bomb. "What are you going to do with it?" she asked, fear in her voice. "I am a restoration expert, Isabel," Gabriel answered, with a cold determination in his tone that Isabel had never heard before. "My job is to turn broken things into something that can be understood and appreciated. Even if they can never be restored to their original state, they can still tell a story, can still be a lesson." "What are you saying?" Isabel asked, her heart racing. "I'm not just ending our marriage," Gabriel continued. "I'm ending it in a special way. A way that will make you, your parents, and Luis understand the consequences of your actions." Isabel felt a wave of fear, not because there was any threat in Gabriel's tone, but because of his calmness and certainty. This wasn't an impulsive threat, but a well-thought-out plan. "What are you going to do?" she asked again. Gabriel picked up the USB drive, putting it back in his pocket. "You'll know," he simply answered. Soon, 2 weeks later, Gabriel moved out of the apartment. The divorce proceedings were underway, the property division almost complete. On the surface, it seemed like a civilized and quiet ending, painful but without drama. But Isabel knew Gabriel still had an unfinished plan, and this kept her awake at night. Meanwhile, Luis's messages became increasingly impatient. First sweet words and promises, then questions, finally irritation. "I thought we had something special," his last message read. "I took a big risk for you. You owe me an explanation." Isabel didn't reply. She had come to realize that Luis's interest in her was mainly the pleasure of conquest, the satisfaction of winning a game, not genuine feelings. And she, shamefully, had once been attracted to this game. Her parents also became impatient. "How is the divorce progressing?" Carmen asked in every call, as if it were a household chore that needed to be completed quickly, not the miserable end of a relationship. One morning, Isabel received a strange envelope containing an elegantly designed invitation to a private exhibition called The Restoration of Truth. The venue was a small art gallery, the date next Friday evening. It wasn't signed, but Isabel immediately knew this was Gabriel's work. Her hands trembled with fear. What was Gabriel planning? How would he use that evidence? More importantly, who would be invited? Soon, she got her answer. Later that day, her parents called, their voices full of confusion and concern. "Do you know what this invitation is about?" Alejandro asked. "Why is Gabriel inviting us to some kind of art exhibition?" Isabel didn't answer, her throat tight with fear. Subsequently, she received a text from Luis. "Your husband just invited me to an art exhibition. Is this some kind of revenge?" In that moment, Isabel understood the scale of Gabriel's plan. He had invited not only her and the main participants, but also their mutual friends, colleagues, and key figures in Barcelona's social circle. This wasn't just a private revenge, but a public exposure. Fear quickly turned to anger, then transformed into a strange acceptance. Perhaps this was what she deserved. Perhaps these were the consequences she had to bear, not just for betraying Gabriel, but for allowing herself to be manipulated by her parents and Luis all her life. On the night of the exhibition, a small group gathered at a boutique gallery in Barcelona. The invitation only stated the restoration of truth, an exhibition about human nature, without providing more details. Guests included Isabel and her parents, Luis, and about 20 key figures from Barcelona's social and professional circles, hotel industry executives, architectural firm owners, art patrons, even several journalists. The gallery was decorated simply yet elegantly, with black curtains hanging on white walls, concealing the works to be displayed. Waiters offered champagne and appetizers, the atmosphere tense and expectant. At exactly 8 o'clock, Gabriel walked to the center of the room. He wore a simple but elegant black suit, his expression serious and calm. The room immediately quieted, all eyes turning to him. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice clear and strong. "Thank you all for attending my first and last personal exhibition. As a restoration expert, my work is usually restoring artworks created by others. But tonight, I will present a different type of restoration, the restoration of truth." He gestured, and assistants unveiled the first work. It was a large, elegantly framed photo collage showing Isabel and Luis in various settings in Seville, with detailed dates, times, and locations. The photos were artistically treated, displayed like historical artifacts, each with detailed descriptions explaining the context and background. There were shocked gasps in the room. Isabel felt the blood drain from her face. Her parents froze in place, while Luis scanned the room, trying to maintain his charming but now obviously nervous smile. "This exhibition isn't just about infidelity," Gabriel continued, his voice calm and powerful. "It's about manipulation, deception, and the consequences of choices. It's about how we are destroyed by people who supposedly love us." The second work was unveiled, a deep analysis of Isabel's parents, including how they had planned this family trip before the wedding, how they contacted Luis and arranged meetings, and how they had tried to control Isabel's life and choices for years. "Every artwork has its background," Gabriel explained, guiding the audience like a true curator. "To understand the destruction before our eyes, we must understand the environment and conditions that contributed to it." With each work revealed, Isabel and her parents' faces grew paler. Luis tried to quietly leave but found the doors locked, not to prevent anyone from leaving, but to ensure the exhibition proceeded as planned. The third section concerned Luis, showing his past patterns, pursuing married or committed women, quickly losing interest after conquest. This information came from the private investigator's research into his past relationships, including anonymous testimonies from several former lovers. "Art needs context," Gabriel continued, "and this particular artist's work pattern is very consistent." The final display was the most shocking, a series of works about Isabel, not condemning, but a deep psychological analysis showing how she had been manipulated by her parents all her life, how she craved approval and social status, and her inner struggles and regrets. This part was both cruel and gentle, both revealing and understanding. At the end of the exhibition, Gabriel stood in the center of the room, wearing a strange calmness on his face. "Restoration isn't just about fixing broken things," he said softly. "Sometimes it's about understanding why things break and what we can learn from the fragments." Tonight's display isn't just about the end of a relationship, but about respect for truth. Because only in the light of truth can we see clearly our actions and their consequences. Then, he simply bowed and left the room, leaving the shocked audience and completely exposed Isabel, her parents, and Luis. The consequences of the exhibition were swift and far-reaching. For Isabel's parents, the social consequences were devastating. Their carefully constructed upper-class image collapsed overnight. Their friends began to distance themselves. Invitations disappeared. For people who valued appearances and reputation so highly, this was the harshest punishment. Carmen and Alejandro tried to contact Isabel, but she refused their calls and messages. A lifetime of manipulation ultimately led to a complete breakdown in their relationship with their daughter. For Luis, the exhibition's impact was primarily business-related. Several hotel industry executives who attended began reconsidering their partnerships with him. not because of his personal behavior, but because of the lack of judgment and arrogance he displayed. Who would trust someone who so easily betrayed others? His reputation was permanently tainted, not as a playboy, but as an untrustworthy business partner. And for Isabel, the consequences were both professional and personal. Her professional reputation took a serious hit. Who would hire a consultant who betrayed her husband to provide advice on loyalty and trust? Several clients quietly terminated contracts, and potential new business disappeared. But the deeper impact was psychological. The exhibition forced Isabel to face not only her betrayal, but also how she had been manipulated by her parents all her life. She began questioning every decision she had ever made, uncertain which were truly her own wishes and which were for her parents' approval. Louise quickly lost interest once she was no longer a target for conquest, but a complex person with real problems and consequences. His last message was simple and cruel. This is too complicated. Good luck. Gabriel disappeared for several months after the exhibition. He took a long leave, reportedly for a special restoration project abroad. When he returned to Barcelona, he looked different, calmer, perhaps more poised, but also more guarded and reserved. The divorce was finally completed, with property equally divided, without any disputes. Gabriel and Isabel met for the last time at the lawyer's office, signing the final documents. "I hope you understand," Gabriel said before they parted. "The exhibition wasn't to punish you. It was for the truth. Sometimes, only when broken things are completely exposed can we truly understand what happened." Isabel nodded, tears in her eyes. "I understand," she said softly, "but it doesn't lessen the pain." "Pain is necessary," Gabriel answered. "Without pain, there is no true understanding. Without understanding, there is no growth." These were the last words they exchanged. A year later, the lives of all three people had changed. Gabriel continued his restoration work, becoming more renowned, especially in handling particularly complex and almost unsalvageable artworks. He focused on his work, rarely attending social events. He didn't start new relationships, outwardly appearing to have chosen solitude. But those who knew him noticed something in his eyes had changed, a deeper understanding, perhaps also a peaceful acceptance. Isabel moved to another city, starting anew. She cut ties with her parents, began therapy, trying to understand her behavior patterns and manipulated life. She didn't seek new relationships, focusing instead on self-discovery and independence. She began writing, documenting her experiences and reflections, partly for therapy, partly to warn others not to repeat her mistakes. Isabel's parents experienced a serious marital crisis, almost ending in divorce. Their social circle drastically shrank. Most of their once proud connections and influence disappeared. They tried several times to contact Isabel, but she maintained her distance, sending only brief messages on major holidays. Luis's hotel business took some hits, but his wealth and charm helped him weather the storm. However, he became more cautious, more aware of the potential consequences of his actions. He no longer pursued married women, at least not so openly. The exhibition became legendary in certain circles in Barcelona, a story about betrayal, revenge, and ultimate truth. For those who attended, it was a powerful reminder that our choices and actions have real consequences, even if they seem insignificant at the time. On a cold winter afternoon, Isabel sat on the balcony of her new apartment, watching the sunset. She was writing in her journal, which had become a habit in her new life. "The restoration of truth isn't about returning to the original state," she wrote. "It's about understanding broken things, appreciating their fragments, and learning from them. I lost my lover, lost my family, lost things I thought were part of my life. But in these losses, I found myself. It's a cruel lesson, one I hope no one needs to learn. But it was also necessary. Because sometimes, only after complete brokenness can we be truly restored." Meanwhile, across Barcelona, Gabriel was in his studio, carefully restoring an ancient painting. His hands were steady and precise, his eyes focused on the details. This painting had once been considered unsalvageable, but Gabriel saw its potential, saw the beauty hidden in the brokenness. Just like his life now, this painting would never return to its original state, but it would be transformed into something new, scarred, historical, but still beautiful, still valuable. Because sometimes true restoration isn't about going back to the past, but accepting the brokenness, understanding it, then moving forward with the wisdom gained from the fragments, with a newfound respect for truth. This is the story of Gabriel and Isabel, not a story about happy endings, but one about truth, consequences, and ultimate transformation. A reminder that sometimes the deepest wounds are not caused by our enemies, but by those who claim to love us, including ourselves. As the sun set, two people who once loved each other continued their separate lives in different corners of the city, forever connected by their shared past, forever shaped by their personal truths. There is beauty in pain, restoration in brokenness, and new beginnings in endings. This is the truth of life, a truth that needs to be respected, understood, and ultimately accepted. Because only in acceptance can we truly find peace, can truly begin the process of restoration, not back to the past, but creating a more truthful, more genuine future. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating content. We look forward to meeting you in our next story.